Jersey.
I just want to first thank my colleague from California for stating it so plain about the character of the individual we're talking about. We have justifiable disagreements in this body. We have strong held beliefs in this body. We have real debates and arguments in this body, but it has been generations and generations and generations since there's been violence in this body. I stand with my back towards the chamber where there was the caning of Sumter during the slavery debates, and a House member came over and beat a United States senator within an inch of his life. You see, there's a decorum here where we have this mutual respect, and we understand that violence is absolutely unacceptable. And if there's anybody that is a man that shows that kind of decency and that kind of peace, my colleague from California put it so plainly. Alex Padilla, like many of my colleagues across the aisle, he's one of the people of true character here. And I think that's why today has hurt so many of us personally, is because of what this breach of this body actually means to all of us. We know the dangers of violence in a democracy and the insidiousness that violence presents, or that fear of violent reprisal presents. Jefferson said it so eloquently: when people fear their government, there is tyranny. When the government fears its people, there is liberty. What is so disturbing when you see a member of this body thrown to the floor, a knee on his shoulder, arms being wrenched behind him after he has identified himself as a United States Senator, is literally what Alex Padilla said. I'm going to pull from what I know he's already said publicly, but this is what he also has written privately. Alex Padilla says, if this is what they do to a senator with a question, imagine what they're doing to farm workers, day laborers, cooks, and so many other of the non-violent immigrants they're targeting. You see, Alex Padilla knows something about this country, which is that we are all, as Martin Luther King so eloquently wrote in those letters from the Birmingham jail, when he was jailed for his nonviolent civil disobedience, what Alex Padilla knows is what King said so eloquently, that we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a common garment of destiny, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That when you have a president that so exceeds his constitutional authority that he begins to do things to infringe upon the fundamental rights, securities of other Americans, it's a threat to all Americans. This is why right across the way, I can almost see it looking through these windows, why the Supreme Court, with nominees from both parties, with 3 Donald Trump appointees on it, ruled 9-0 in support of the due process rights of someone in our country that was not even a citizen of this nation. Because of the Constitution using the word any persons, knowing that if you erode the due process rights of anybody in this nation, it's a threat to the due process rights of everyone in this nation. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Understand what we saw today. A United States Senator forcibly removed from a room in a federal building. A federal official forcibly removed from a federal building after he identified himself as a United States Senator. But after he was out of that building, they did not stop there. They drove our colleague to his knees and then forcibly shoved him upon his face, wrenched his arms behind him. And Alex Padilla writes that if they do that to me, what are they doing to farm workers and cooks and domestics? What are they doing to other people? What does that mean if they're using the violent force of government unjustly against him. This is a breach. This body has not seen such a breach in my lifetime or longer, where the executive has treated an honorable member of this body in this way. That should be enough. But our colleague correctly points out that if we are in an environment where that is happening to a United States senator, what does it say? If the government of the United States is unjustly taking violent action against a United States senator, dear God, what does it mean for other Americans? That's what Alex Padilla asked today. Now, I will tell you this. This is not an isolated incident. That is the challenge. We have already seen the actions taken against a mayor, a local government official, who himself was forcibly handcuffed, dragged into a police vehicle, held for hours as a prisoner, and then when he finally got before a judge, that judge reprimanded this administration for an abuse of their power. Alex Padilla sees this with the violation of the due process rights of individuals going on in this country. Alex Padilla has seen this with a mayor in America unjustly incarcerated, handcuffed, held. This is the challenge we have in this moment. I love this quote by my favorite author, James Baldwin, who wrote this letter the night that authorities came and arrested Angela Davis. He said, "If they come for you in the morning, then they will come for me at night. If they come for you at the morning, then they will come for me at night." This administration, in its abuse of power, in the audacity of handcuffing, of violently assaulting, of forcibly pushing to his knees and onto his stomach a United States senator, what does that say? We all gather right there as senators to raise our hand and swear our oath to uphold the Constitution. But we're not the only ones. Members of the Supreme Court do that. They're not the only ones with members of this body. Administrative officials do that as well. We are bound by the laws of this land. And the terrifying thing for every American should be a government that is not restrained by the law, by a government that misuses its power, and not just its power to use violence unjustly against its citizenry. That's when we slip away from our democratic ideals, from our constitutional principles, and slide towards an authoritarian government that wants to make its people heel before them, kneel before them. That's what I physically saw with my own eyes, a member of this body being driven to his knees for asking a question, for standing up to speak truth to power. What was the response? The response was violence. Being dragged out of that room, being forced to his knees, being thrown prostrate, and being handcuffed. And here is the thing that frustrates me the most. Is this another day where the lead stories will be about the actions of this administration? We've seen a week where it is violating a tradition that's gone back before I was born, where the federal government should activate federal troops in a community it goes through. In fact, I know the statute, Article 10, Section 12, 406. that they should go through the governors, work in coordination with them. But no, this was a provocative incident of moving military troops at the expense of taxpayers into a community where even the leader of the police department says this is wrong. All of this, from the beginning of our week to this unprecedented action of violently removing a United States senator from a federal building, from a room, thrown upon the ground, driven to his knees and handcuffed. This is all purposefully being done in our country by a president that has a different view of his authorities as president. That if a judge criticizes him, he believes it is wrong. He drew reprimand from the Supreme Court for his calling out justices whose opinions he disagrees with. This is a president that doesn't believe in the checks and balances of our Constitution. But the frustrating thing about all of this is it is distracting us. This dangerous, violent distraction from the bill that we should be discussing on this floor about the ripping away of health care from millions of Americans, the cutting of food stamps from millions of children, the cutting of services for disabled Americans, the cutting of supports for our senior citizens. This monumental moment, the biggest transfer of wealth from working people in America to millionaires and billionaires, this moment that should be dominating our attention and our focus, this imminent bill that's being debated and discussed here in the Senate right now that has such incredible consequences, putting $2.4 trillion more of debt in our country, raising the energy costs on the average American by hundreds of dollars. This bill that would raise the premiums of people in our nation by hundreds of dollars. This bill that merits debate and discussion because it is so violative of our common values. This bill that takes food away from the hungry, health care away from the sick, that takes working people and makes their challenges harder, all to give more tax cuts to billionaires and drives up our deficit by the trillions. That should be the central conversation in our country. But this president, almost as if he knows the unpopularity of his bill, the betrayal of his bill, is misusing, abusing his powers, and trying to change the conversation in the most despicable of ways. Abusing his authority, treading on our traditions, violating our Constitution, and now, perhaps, one of the greatest violent assaults on a member of this body by the executive. This is not metaphorical, this is literal. A member of this body, after identifying himself, physically and forcibly dragged out of a room in a federal building. Then, when the doors were closed, you can see it on the camera, the federal government, the executive branch, taking a member of this body, a member of the United States Senate, a co-equal branch of our government, and driving that man to his knees, slamming him upon his face, wrenching his arms behind his back. That's what we're talking about in this body right now. This is a dangerous time in America. When the president from the Oval Office says, almost daringly, "Do not protest my parade," warns people about protests. And this is the thing that the president of the United States doesn't understand about this country. When a president is violating norms and traditions, violating our Constitution, dissent is not unpatriotic. Protest is not un-American. Silence is unpatriotic. This is a time where protest is justified. Peaceful protest is necessary and vital. This is a time where speaking up and exercising your constitutional principles like freedom of speech, like freedom of assembly, like the right to petition your government is demanded by our democracy. When you have a president that so flagrantly violates the checks and balances, so much so that their authorities today kept a senator from stepping forward and asking questions to an executive official and is met by violence. This is exactly the time that our founders saw that we must stand up and speak up and protest peacefully and let our voices be heard, because silence in a time like this is complicity. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have to see this. It doesn't take that much mental acuity to understand that if this was the Biden administration or the Obama administration and an official used their security detail to put another person in this body, to put a senator from the other side of the aisle on their knees and in handcuffs, we would see outrage. This is not about left or right. This is about right or wrong. And today we saw a deep, grave wrong heaped upon not just this body, but as Alex Padilla wrote so eloquently, upon the ideals. Because if you could do this to a United States senator, then you can do it to another American. Mr. President, I yield the floor.